Morning, it's Daniel Pessar. I'm an attorney, and I'm passionate about bringing landlords and tenants together to do more deals. And I do that by drafting and negotiating lease agreements. Today, I thought it would be helpful to offer a few tips to leasing brokers to help them get more deals done. The first is leasing brokers are often faced with landlords who are sitting on vacant space and are not comfortable with the prices being offered by the tenant. Maybe the space needs work. It's really worth $10 a foot in the condition it's in. With renovations, it'll be worth $20 a foot, but who's going to do that work? So one way that I've seen brokers successfully communicate to landlords is to say, what if in the first year, instead of the tenant paying you with cash, they pay you in renovations? Now, there's a big trust issue here that has to be overcome. Let's say the landlord's okay with that. Instead of the tenant paying $10,000 a month, the tenant will do $120,000 in renovations, and the space will become a lot more valuable as a result. There's a trust issue. What if the tenant doesn't do a good job? What if the scope of work is not really correct? What if the tenant actually causes damage instead of creating value for the space? So one thing that is a solution to this is if the landlord has relationships with vendors in the market. Let's say there's a president of a local masonry shop or in a licensed electrician or plumber called Andy. And the landlord trusts that Andy always does a good job. He's not the cheapest. He's not the most expensive. He can do work with permits. If it's a scope of work that doesn't require permits, he can do it without permits. He trusts Andy to get it done. You can put in the lease that the tenant must, by this date, perform a certain scope of work with Andy. And the free rent or a rent credit will only kick in at a certain time if that's been done within a certain timeline, and so on and so on. So that's one example where creative lease structure can actually bridge the gap between a landlord who wants a certain rent, tenant who wants to pay another rent, where you can take trust out of the equation, which can be one of the hardest parts to get over, by having some sort of third party, let's say a trusted vendor, be the one that the lease requires that by a certain date and a certain scope of work, that vendor accomplishes that. And in doing so, the broker can come and say, hey, we don't have it's going to be a rent credit for the first year, let's say, but you're going to have way better space. You don't have to come out of pocket for the renovations. And even though from a cash flow perspective, it can feel costly to the landlord, at the same time, it's not the same as the uncertainty that comes with not knowing how the scope of work plays out with an unvetted vendor, an unclear scope of work, and landlord and tenant that may not have a relationship up until that point.